on a significant number of them. And I think we're not doing exceptionally well, I think, as a country, at a sovereign level. And I guess that the ability for us to achieve many of these goals is a function of the extent to which there's a asymmetry in terms of policy choices, policy design, and the robustness rather of the application of those policies. So the presentation will just regurgitate what the MDGs are about for purposes of recapping, and try to demonstrate that, in fact, the SDGs are a mutation of the MDGs. There's a greater focus on the kind of future that we want to achieve. And you'll see, if you were to contrast the MDGs and the SDGs, is that the MDGs primarily were the preeminent focus of developing or poor countries. And I think there's been a reconfiguration, a rethink on what should constitute the globally agreed agenda going forward. And that's how the SDGs came about. Hopefully they'll be agreed to now in September, and that is going to define the post-2015 dispensation. And then, as part of this exercise, there's a need for, it triggers, if you like, policy changes. Just a reconsideration on how we do things, a rethink or a reformulation of the policy choices that we are making here in the country. So as indicated, the MDGs really are about the globally, universally agreed objectives. And there were 8 in number, as the next slide will show. And you can see that they are, in essence, about the restoration of the dignity of our people. And if you like, if you were to examine all of them, you'll see that the developed countries would have achieved almost all of these things, except the need for us to develop global networks on how best to ensure that there's greater consolidation where we have achieved, and then where we haven't made any significant or desirable progress, how best do we assist those countries that are lagging behind. But if you look at them, just a snapshot, it tells you that this is the problem of developing countries. And in fact, as they mutate into the SDGs, it begins to provide a more comprehensive appreciation of the challenges that are facing the globe. I thought that it will be very useful for, as part of calibrating, Councillor now, that they were able to have an appreciation of what has been the rapid global population growth. And remember that the center of gravity of this population growth is cities, and cities have become nucleus of growth, the new frontiers for ensuring that there's development. I think what the slide attempts to do is to show you how we have moved, the population has grown by 1 billion from one period to the other. And you can see that the gradient of the curve shows you that whilst the second billion was reached over a period of about 200, close to 250 years, the next billion was only achieved in about 40 years. So that's the rapidness, and obviously that puts pressure on the global infrastructure and our ability to meet the needs of current generation and how we are able to accommodate posterity. The next slide, very important because it tells you about what I refer to as a demographic transition. You will see that the global north, and I'm talking in aggregate terms, the global north is it's aging, placing pressure on the primary health care. Very few people are able to participate, as I speak to the previous slides, very few are participating in the mainstream economy, and they are putting pressure on the withdrawals of the savings that they would have made, and therefore the global north is unable to assist the global south with regards to investment opportunities because they need those resources. The biggest opportunities that the global south has, and sub-Saharan Africa in particular, is the fact that the significant majority of the population is 35 years and younger. Obviously, it can mean other things. I mean, if they are unemployed, unskilled, they constitute the critical mass of the population. They represent what I call the perfect storm, and you just need to look at Libya, Egypt, and the like, led by young people. Again, as we continue to have an appreciation of the evolution of the global economy, so that you have a better comprehension of the extent to which you are able to resolve the challenges as identified in the SDGs. You will notice that as McKinsey has done a study that reveals that about 600, the top 600 cities in the world, they constitute about 54% of the global GDP. So the emergence of the city-state, if you like, is going to be preeminent going forward. And that's where the majority of these challenges are going to be resolved going forward. So I think that's what the slide attempts to do, is that the future is indeed cities. And you know that the States SA has done a research. The 2011 studies shows that, I mean, in cities like Tshwane, I can speak of that with authority, you are receiving 10,000 new people per month coming into the space, the city space. And that has got its own pressures, and the same is applicable to other major cities. This is an interesting slide. Just sit back and imagine a picture of the global map. So what this does is, where there are significant distortions of the global map, it's the contours of the continent as we understand them. It can reflect, let's take Africa for an example, that strip, that in terms of GDP projections is going to be growing much slower than what is the aggregate, the global aggregate. If you look at Asia to your right, you can see that it is almost burgeoned. It shows that, in fact, the growth is concentrated in those areas, and also North America is a case in point. And then the next slide shares with you what is the global population, projected global population by 2050. Just contrast it with the last one. You'd have noticed that the GDP projections are much thinner, leaner on the African continent, and generally in the global south. But when you look at the projected population growth, is in fact concentrated sub-Saharan Africa and also Asia again. Sub-Saharan Africa is going to find it extremely difficult to meet some of these challenges because the rate of growth of population is not matched by GDP growth. And I think that's the point we are making. I mean, there's work, extensive work that was done by Thomas Piketty. Piketty makes the point that if the rate of return is greater than return investment in capital is greater than GDP growth, it means inequality is going to grow and grow exponentially. So we're trying to reflect on some of the current economic variables that are going to influence the extent or degree to which we are able to achieve some of these. This slide simply shows that we are doing terribly poor as a country. I had said that the MDGs is a problem of developing and poor countries. And you can see that we are in the bottom half. It might not be coming out nicely there, but South Africa is in the bottom half of the ranking. So this is the aggregate picture that communicates the extent to which we are able to meet these MDGs. We are not doing very well. And then the next slide simply just brings this home on the areas where we are not doing well. And in fact, this is an aggregate picture of sub-Saharan Africa. At an aggregate level, we are doing very well. But if we were to disaggregate it or remove South Africa from that, I think sub-Saharan Africa will do even much better. So we are lagging behind. So you can see that it's not necessarily a function of resources because we are well endowed more than the countries that are ahead of us. It's also a function of the policy choices that you are making and the extent to which public and private sector work together to resolve these challenges. Again, I think the next slide simply takes that continue to give you a reflection on sub-Saharan Africa. Yes, we can see that we are doing very well as a region, but the point there is that South Africa is way behind. The next slide simply communicates that. I don't think that I'm going to take time on that. And then the next slide speaks about, issues around emissions and carbon emission. There's a relationship between emissions and affluence because the more affluent you are, the more you go up the economic ladder, the more you accumulate, the more you consume, the more you buy more than one car. And then so there's a relationship between emissions and affluence. And that's why you'll expect North America to be to be emitting more and Africa much less. But I think over time, as the economy grows, the fastest, 6 of the top fastest growing economies in the world are located in Africa, sub-Saharan Africa. But it's from a low base. But you think that over a passage of time, emissions are going to increase rapidly. And then the next slide simply tells you about what the position of cities. I mean, that's the point. The study that was done by McKinsey, like I said, they contribute, these 600 cities are home to 2 billion people. And they constitute about, say, $64 trillion of GDP, 52% of the global economy. We are lifting these things so that we are able to bring home what the role of cities would be going forward. And again, it's another reformulation of the point that I've been making this slide. Let's go to the next slide. I think it communicates again an important message. The next one, the message that this one communicates is the issues around the number of active mobile broadband subscriptions. You can see that the developing countries are still lagging. They are sitting at about 21%. So we're missing an opportunity there. I mean, it talks about cell phone penetration, the degree to which we are exposed to internet connectivity. You know that there's a relationship between the maturity of internet ecosystem and GDP growth. The World Bank makes the point that it can account to up to 3% of GDP growth, the degree to which there's maturity of internet ecosystem. The next one is just the relationship between the growth of cities going forward. We have isolated the metros, but I guess it's applicable to even secondary cities. It's not applicable to rural municipalities because this is largely on account of the repelling factors in those areas. The NDP makes a point that by 2030, we'll have 11 million more people staying in those cities, and the spread there, 9% of the 11 million more compared to today's numbers will be in Johannesburg, 7 in Cape Town, eThekwini, so on and so forth. And then the next slide simply try to bring home the demographic dimensions, the economic dimensions around the growth rate. You can see that big cities have demonstrated some degree of resilience. Even at the height of the global economic recession, they've been very stubborn. They've been growing at a rate much greater than the average growth rate in the country. You know, the NDP says for us to attain, amongst others, 6% or less unemployment by 2030, the economy must grow year on year by about 5.4%. We are far off. I was reading an article now, the Stats SA has released statistics. GDP there's greater contraction, in fact, for reasons that are obvious to us, and they have to do with the energy supply. And then the next slide speaks to the metros. Really, I won't have the point. Let's go to what constitutes the 2015, the post-agenda for 2015, and it's about transforming the world. And you'll see that the Sustainable Development Goals is a greater expansion of the MDGs, and it begins to allocate responsibility to everyone. You know, one of the contentious points that the developing countries won in the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, the COP17 Conference of Parties in Durban, is this insertion of common but differentiated responsibilities. Yes, I mean, the Global South must exploit its mineral endowments to advance. The Global North can't dictate that reduce emissions when, in fact, they've benefited from those endowments, and that's why we're talking about common but differentiated responsibilities. And then the next slide, it talks about what these goals are. These are proposed goals, like I said. The expectation is that they will be adopted now in September. So you can see it talks about sustainable cities and human settlements, about sustainable production and consumption patterns. So there are responsibilities that are placed on the global north, affluent countries, developed countries. So it's not a preoccupation of poor countries, it's a shared responsibility. So it's a multiple of them. As we go to an end, and then you will see that the SDGs really are about to make cities and human settlements inclusive, safe, resilient, and sustainable. So low carbon growth, resource efficient, and they must be livable. I think that's the point that is beginning to make. And the policy choices as we go to the next slides. I think we can skip it's just well, this is just a synthesis of what those SDGs are about. They've grouped them into those that contribute to the restoration of the dignity of the citizens, those that talk to prosperity. I mean, the MDGs were not about prosperity, were about the restoration of dignity. This takes it to a different plane, about growth, inclusive, it must be sustainable so that we are securing the interest of posterity. And then it's got its own implications. Those implications around priorities for city leaders in shaping competitive and inclusive cities. So here it's a formulation of what must be front center of the policy choices that cities are going to make. So this is the preeminent issues that requires attention. So cities must be seen as developing the foundation for strong local economic performance. The point that Councillor Now was making, you know, we've got original powers. When I say original powers, they derive from the Constitution, which is the supreme law. And one of those is around economic development. So it's a reassessment of that, if you like. So if, as we look at through these SDGs obligations through the lenses of local government, it's a reaffirmation of what our forebearers had comprehended in the Constitution. Again, the issues around the quality of life, ensuring that there's a concentration of skills, we are able to crowd in investment. These are some of the policy choices that needs to be considered going forward. And the next one is about the responsibility, the environmental aspects. I guess Paris will resolve on issues around COP21, and that's why SALGA is going to an interest and organized voice of local government across the globe must make the case, because the traction of these policy choices is in local government, if you like, the subnational, if you had to use the conception of the UN, the wording of the UN. And then there are issues around ensuring that they are financially sustainable. These cities, I guess you need to grow the economy. This is linked to what Minister Gordhan was raising earlier on. As I conclude, then the next slide, there's a need for a consideration of a new dispensation in the light of the SDGs and the centrality of cities, and the fact that the center of gravity is in cities. So I think the sooner we appreciate that, the better, and there must be symmetry with regards to what the sovereign province and the local state is doing. So, I mean, just making the point that indeed cities are anchors and drivers of national economies. We have shared with you the global statistics. If you can bring it back home, the top big cities, if you like, the so-called metros, they contribute over 63% of the country's GDP. Over 40% of the population is residing in those cities. And there's a need for a possible consideration on special legislation, and functional planning authorities are required to maximize the role of cities in building the national economy. I think Spluma is taking us there. The fact that the reconfiguration of the apartheid space is in fact the exclusive domain of cities. I think it begins to reassert the centrality of cities so that you are able to reconfigure space and you are able to address the issues of the SDG. So we need to be building capacity to realize that. Thanks, Chair.
A round of applause to the Honorable Councillor. Honorable members, allow me to say, the word of God say, we need to welcome the angels. We need to welcome everybody, because at the end of the day, you never know whether you welcome the angels or not. But I don't know whether the councillor, by welcoming 10,000 people every day, every month in the city, is also part of those angels. I don't know whether you're fortunate or unfortunate, councillor. So you have a very serious problem when it comes to infrastructure. We are now going forward, and we proceed and call the Honorable Anushka Williams. She will be responsible for this, working with municipalities in achieving the sustainable development goals. Come forward, Ma, and do the presentation here. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, honorable members and traditional leaders. I'm Anushka Williams and I'm representing the Good Governance Learning Network. Thank you for the opportunity, firstly, to share the work of the network of the Good Governance Learning Network and how it relates to sustainable development goals. Local government is identified as the core implementing agent of the development mandate, and there is no disagreement on the part of civil society with a high level policy and idealized image of local government. Where the challenge lies is how to make these policy ideals happen. As a network of organizations working in the interface between government and local communities, we realize there's a great need to pay attention to the governance systems in place which give light to these policies. And the core challenge we identify is that citizens often feel excluded from these institutions and developmental practices. And this is also related to the crisis of trust in local government. And as we reflect on the state of local government and prepare for the 2016 local government elections, the GGLN has identified 4 instrumental elements in the design of an institution and governance system that will give life to this. We've noticed that the back to basics approach does pick up on some of these elements, and but we are a bit concerned that or afraid that citizen engagement must not be reduced to citizen communication, because it is much more than that. Moving on to the governance system, we identified that there's a great need for these systems to be more responsible. And when we look at responsible, as you all know, it speaks about accountability and consistency, efficiency and effectiveness. And these are important for ensuring the objectives of local government are achieved, and that local government is able to address the challenges it faces. Responsibility also refers to the individuals in local government, and it resonates with the organizational culture, public service ethos, and it needs to be expressed in the behavior of representatives of local government. We move further. We notice also that there's a need for these institutions to be more responsive. And when we speak about responsive, it's the degree to which government listens to what people says, their needs, and acts on it. And we, as a network, we've distinguished between shallow responsiveness and deep responsiveness. And we speak about shallow responsiveness in terms of the well set up communication loops and feedback loops that are set up in communities. But when we speak about deep responsiveness, it refers to development by both the state and citizens of deliberative democracy. And that's a practice that places deliberation and negotiation at the heart of civic engagement. So to give real meaning to what responsiveness is, there's a real need for local government to create suitable and adequate processes for citizen engagement in local affairs. When we move on to the actual governance system, we propose a system that's based on 4 elements. Firstly, we look at the values and principles that set the foundation for the local governance systems. And these values reflect both organizationally and personally. And organizationally, the values refer to the standards of behavior and the importance of value-driven system of governance. And this gives birth to an organizational culture and expresses how municipal representatives perform and the interaction with communities and external stakeholders. And this also affects the individual level of values and principles that needs to be embedded in the system. Secondly, in the institutional system, we look at the procedures and the systems and practices and how these give life to those policy ideals. So it's important for us to realize that these systems, the methods that are adopted to give life, and the policies and plans need to be embedded in the idea and the notions of responsiveness and responsibility. And this is often where the disjuncture takes place between the policy and implementation, because either it's not being able to being implemented in terms of not it doesn't run through these processes, doesn't run through from the top right down to on the ground where we speak about these, because I know local government has a lot of documents that speak to Bato Pele and all of those, but a lot of the times that's not the experience that comes through on the ground. Finally, we also look at capabilities and what is required for local government to perform these developmental agenda and how to give life to that. And there's a lot of need in terms of social facilitation skills and mechanism to deal with contestation and dissent. And we recognize that there's a need for both technical and social facilitation skills in local government. And leadership is also a key element in the local governance system and in the model that we present. And we identify as it being related to the focus on the advantage of community as a whole and on the public good, and effective leadership as the foundation of a good institutional governance system. And if you just go back to the model we presented, it has those 4 layers. You can see leadership is at the outer layer, but it could also have been presented close to the center because leadership drives, in essence, all of these processes and capabilities. But we thought that leadership is best placed outside so that it can give guide and formation to the rest of the governance system. And then if we move on, yeah, so next I'm just going to present some of the work that our member organizations have been doing that relates to the theme and to the developmental processes and goals. Our member in KwaZulu-Natal Democracy Development Program has responded to the experience of xenophobia in the country earlier this year. And they described the response as part of a civic response, as well as the municipality also responded to the xenophobic violence. And they are of the opinion that the city's response was inadequate, and that was mainly due to the poor relationship between the city and civil society. So there was a lot of fragmentation and unorganization and uncoordination in trying to respond to those challenges in KwaZulu-Natal. We also have a member organization, Ephesus Core Plan, that had a look and explored the integrated development process. And they are saying that there's a lot of tools and mechanisms available on the ground that would enable it to be more responsive in terms of the planning processes and also more responsible in terms of implementation. And they argue that citizen engagement in development, when it is lacking or when it's absent, development is often undermined. And they're saying that we need to embody more local citizen engagement and participation, and it needs to embody responsive planning and responsible implementation. Another example of local experiences on the ground of local government was with the Socioeconomic Right Institute, and they present the struggles of informal settlements and how informal settlements and local communities often use tactics to negotiate for the development and change. And these communities often, they compete with a lot of interest on the urban development agenda, and they realize that protest is a powerful tool to hold the state account, and especially around important political moments. But often the response to local communities is from the state, they are often criminalized, and this becomes problematic for that negotiation between communities and the state. And SERI calls for more, that the state recognize and local government recognize community-initiated modes of engagement as being legitimate and finding alternative ways of negotiating contestation and dissent in communities. My throat is getting a bit dry when I speak so much. Sorry. Can I get thanks.
This one.
Oh, thanks. I'm so sorry.
Cheers.
We look at another example from Community Organization Resource Center, and they explored informal settlement upgrading policy. And they're saying that there's a new shift to a new approach, and it's motivated by a renewed political commitment to upgrading informal settlements. And that is, it's merely to address historical injustices and failed previous programs. And central to this renewed approach is a commitment to capacitate and empower communities through the upgrading process. But upon reviewing some of the informal settlement upgrading projects, they realized that housing projects were often disguised or misrepresented as informal settlement upgrading, and this often excluded from communities from the opportunities to participate and to get that access to capacity building and empowerment. So people were excluded from these processes. SALGA Institute examined community-based monitoring as an emerging opportunity and participation tool that citizens can use to enhance accountability and responsiveness in local government. And they looked at community-based monitoring processes that were initiated from national government as well as a community-based monitoring from a grassroots movement. And they realized that there's a lot of capacity that is required on the part of the state as well as citizens to be able to meaningfully use community monitoring processes as an effective tool to demand accountability and action from the state. And the last example I just want to share with you is from our member organization, the Trust for Community Outreach and Education, and they present the challenges of the dual system of governance in rural areas. And focusing on rural communities in the Eastern Cape, they realized that the conflation of roles between traditional authorities and municipalities is shown to culminate into a series of disagreements, contestations, and there's often confusion about the role and who the point of call is for service delivery failures. So this duality, having this double system of governance in one area, there's challenges to who the real leaders are and who communities accept as the leaders. And there's often cases where leaders are unable to collaborate, and it hinders development in the rural areas. So TCOE, they call for the dual system. As it limits communities' ability to demand their rights. They call for reassessment and realignment of traditional jurisdiction and ward boundaries so that there's more responsible and responsive governance in those rural areas to facilitate development. And our latest GGLN publication, it's online on our website. If you wanna you can download it for free. I have some copies here. But from our latest publication, which was launched earlier this year, it's clear that we have a long way to go in trying to achieve responsible and responsive local governance. And change is needed on all 4 levels in terms of those dimensions of a governance system. We need to have new tools and methodologies for citizen engagement. And this will not change the status quo significantly if we don't build public trust in local government unless there's a public service ethos that drives the change. There need to be appropriate capabilities and resources, as well as value-driven leadership. And as the GGLN, we have learned the value and the promise of citizen participation in development. And if local government continues the practice of citizen engagement as an afterthought and doesn't make citizen engagement the center point of development, I don't know how it's going to be able to fulfill the constitutional mandate as well as the sustainable development goals. Thank you. So, sorry to interrupt. On the website is listed up there. If you can get a copy of the publication and you can see these examples that we've listed of processes of citizen engagement and local government.
Thank you very much, Anushka. I think we need the presentation because some of the slides is not visible. Okay. Yeah, maybe if you can get the presentation. Another round of applause, honorable members. A heavy one. Thank you very much. We all believe that change is needed in all the dimensions of government system. But if we don't have the knowledge, then we will have a very serious problem as the drivers in this leadership. Maybe I should request the honorable councillors, especially the deputy chairpersons of SALGA, Councillor Nawa and my co-chairperson here. I can see Mrs. Hermans Nombulele is not here, but I think if you can find a way of inviting Anushka in your preparatory committee, I think she can be of much help because we really need that skills. Thank you very much. We came to the end of the presenters in this session. I am now going to hand it over to my co-chairperson so that she take us through to the discussions of all the presentations that we did have. Thank you very much. Over to you.
Thank you, Co-Chair. We were asking one or each other here because sometime we were missing what Anushka was presenting because she was too fast and we said, hey, she's energetic. We were trying to catch up, but the main issue, you might have the same problem as well. And we are old, she's reminding me. The main issue that I could pick up is that there is a need of continuously engaging with communities. And there are areas, a large number of areas where communities are not happy in terms of the services and all that, and information in terms of her presentation. And I want to agree with my co-chair here that engagement in SALGA, I think there are opportunities for such presentations. I remember your company once, or your institution once made a presentation, but I think working together, if you are more on local government, it will assist that together we have one focus. Let me allow members to start engaging on the 4 presentations. The presentation by Honorable Tau, the presentation by the Deputy Chairperson of SALGA, Councillor Nawa, the presentation that shocked me, the stats from the Executive Mayor, Councillor Ramokgopa, and the last one, Mayor Anushka. Can I invite debates or discussions or recommendations? Yeah, it looks like everything was clear. Councillor Kwali? Madam Honorable Member here will be number 2. You will be number 3, Honorable Member. Councillor Kwali?
Thank you, Co-Chair. And to Honorable Tau, and I did have a quick word with him after his presentation, but I really appreciated his comment that the list has been received of legislation and regulation that is of concern to local government. But the question I would like to put is, how does he, and maybe it can be a subject of discussion here, how do we go forward together to actually get going with this? Because he did mention that we need to discuss the detail and how the impact is there. I do understand that we've already given some indication of that, but how do we go forward and what timeline is there to that?
Thank you, Chairperson. First and foremost, let say I accepted the inputs, but my questions are at SALGA. And the last speak, although I don't have the input in writing. First and foremost, I want to understand, in these 15 years, SALGA, it's not clear how they grade the municipalities so that they can couple that with the staff establishment. All the municipalities, there's no organogram. And this input is very silent on that. And secondly, the plight of workers in all the municipalities, there's no upgrading of them in terms of training for promotion, so that we can have a sustainable municipality. My last question. There's no framework which is tabled here when the municipality is not having a good governance in terms of service delivery. As a result, how long is the intervention of SALGA as a structure when there's a conflict and a public protest by the masses, even the workers? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, mine is also maybe just recommendations to SALGA. It is on the sense of oversight in municipalities, that the MPEC. And I think that in most of our municipalities, we do have the MPECs, but we're still struggling with the effective functioning of municipalities, of MPECs. Because if you look at the Northern Cape, for example, in most of our municipalities, we have less than 10 councillors. And then there's a problem with the functioning. So maybe we must just relook the guidelines of MPEC again. And then my other one is on the strengthening of the municipalities to engage with mining companies. I think we must really speed up the process of strengthening the municipalities to engage with mining companies, because we are sitting with a situation where municipalities can't negotiate, or they don't know how to negotiate on the SLPs of of mines and so on. And if you look, there's a lot of development in most of our municipalities, but you can't see change in our people, the living standards of our people and so on. So we must understand, and maybe we must start to negotiate the thing in the mining charter of the local, because we understand local, but mining companies use that local not to procure local, because local is South Africa, and now they use it as a scapegoat, not to procure locally and to empower our local people. Thank you.
That was the third one. The fourth one, Honorable Member.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, I'm not sure the issue of the absence of the two locals. It's like it just been passed. And I think invites were sent. I think maybe you should have commented much further to show discipline on whether the work was done to invite them, because it sounds as if it's a dereliction of duty. I think there are two issues that I thought maybe one could raise. Well, the presentation I welcomed. The challenge probably one was expecting, it's about those areas that are quite serious in terms of challenge. Probably the monthly report will assist. But one was, there's an issue that I was expecting maybe could be talked about. The issue of response time when there are complaints in the locality. To me, that's very central. And that response time, it's a reflection on our service delivery. So one was, I'm thinking that if we could have a comment on that. The issue of traditional leaders, Chair, it's quite central. I know that traditional leaders have presented, but I think the issue of traditional leaders, it can't only be heard from traditionals only. It must also be heard from us, whether local government or provincial government, in relation to the support that we are giving. So I heard that from the SALGA. Yes, it does appear, but I don't feel the great support that is being given to traditional leaders. in particular on incidents that are taking place in our locality, especially around the issue of initiations. I mean, initiation is being vulgarized generally by the media without really understanding the challenges that are there. And I think municipalities working with traditional leaders, it's one intervention that we can declare that one death is one death, it's too much. And we commit ourselves that working with traditional leaders at local government, provincial level, and national, we have to stop that. Thank you.
Questions, but it's a culture that we take 5, Madam.
No, thanks, Honorable Chair. Let me also welcome the presentations by the 4 presenters. Chair, I would just maybe take a point that has been raised by the Deputy Chair of NCOP in terms of interventions by executive and as endorsed by the NCOP. I think, Chair, we need maybe in this platform to reflect and also look into how has that impacted on the performance of municipalities in terms of Section 154, Section 139 interventions as endorsed by the NCOP. We need to have a way where NCOP, SALGA, and the legislature portfolio committees work together in terms of doing an assessment of the performance of municipalities that actually has been put under administration, because we must have a point whereby we assess our financial performance, whereby we say that is it value for money. You can't repeatedly put municipalities under administration, but there's no a point where we work together with SALGA to assess how have we sustained that process once administration has been put in any municipality as well as afterwards. So I think as this, in this plenary chair, it's one area that we need to strengthen and foster how we relate, not imposing only Section 139 as executive and endorsing it as a portfolio committee, as well as endorsing it as an NCOP. There must be a process of an assessment thereof and the impact thereof. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. I know there are a lot of other honorable members and councillors who would want to engage, but let's allow members who did presentations to enter or to respond to questions. I know that most of what was said here were advices and comments, like your traditional leaders issue that it should be like local government be our business, all of us. And to the first person who spoke here, or the second one, after Councillor Kwali, Madam Honorable Member, who indicated in terms of organogram, it's a serious, let me call it allegation, because in terms of SALGA, in terms of local government, it is the responsibility of the municipality to hire. If you put an advert, you first start by creating that, if that post is vacant, it must be appearing. When we adopt our IDPs, they are not gonna be adopted if there is no organogram. So it's the first time to hear that there is a municipality without organogram. According to us, there is no such. But if there is one, in this case, it will be proper to indicate to us in terms of the name of the municipality. I do not think it will be a bad thing to know that, because then it means there is fraud in that municipality that is doing that. But it's not supposed to happen. It means it's not only the municipality that is in trouble or in hot water in terms of this, because your MEC for Cllr is also aware of when if we say your IDPs are credible, they are with your organogram. If the organogram is not there, it means this municipality is dead. And I think that is one that one can upfront respond on. It's a simple thing that cannot happen. Can I allow people who did presentations to respond on some issues? Councillor Nawa will come. Councillor Honorable Tau is also here. The questions are not only limited to people who presented. I know that in the house here, there will be some people who want to engage and respond to questions that were raised. Councillor, the Deputy Chair will first come. The next one will be Councillor Pinky Muloi, Councillor Magabe, who will be engaging in terms of all the questions raised. I will take some more names. Councillor.
No, Chair, thank you very much. I'm sure the first part that we should further intensify is the fact that the 15 years has been characterized by different epochs and new things that have emerged in local government. And earlier on, I should have explained that the first 5 years of local government was to focus largely on ensuring that the system is functional, i.e., that the brief of local government constitutionally was to ensure that we create a democratic local government, socio-economic conditions, provide basic services. And therefore, if you are to measure whether there's been progress, that must help you to check whether local government is beginning to respond to those challenges. And I would want to argue that largely there's been a response, not as perhaps we would have expected, but municipalities across the country has done so much. And in that 5 years, you had to create wall-to-wall municipalities. So you have to reduce them from 800 and something to 250. You have to ensure that you establish new metros and districts. So the whole movement of creating wall-to-wall municipalities has its own challenges, but largely you can claim progress in positivity on what has happened over the following years. And therefore, I think as we continue, we need to really build a story and see how lives of people have changed over the 15 years. Earlier on, we made figures and change of what has been the state of water, sanitation, electricity, how towns have changed, what has been the response of the metros, the districts, and small municipalities. And surely as we move on towards the 5th of December this year, we should be able to pull up a strong political story that tells the goodness of the evolution and what has been the challenges and achievements of local government. And I'm sure in the presentation that we have made, we attempt to show what has been the change and what a local government would mean. I'm sure the point raised by Honorable Member, I don't think she meant there's no organogram. I think she meant there are critical positions that are not filled. Because I don't think we should necessarily make a meal out of what she said. The point she was making that it could be possible as a position that is not filled. And when are you filling it? So that does not necessarily mean there's no organogram. I'm sure we can overplay it. So I therefore would want to say we should not go to say which municipality does And Honorable Member, I think the point of going back to basics, part of the pillars, one pillar responds to that. If you are to talk about good governance, is to ensure that you fill all critical positions. And I think one pillar that also speaks to create or building resilient institutions is to cover that space that we do. And the minister, and I'm sure the presentation of SALGA would have indicated there's been a gradual improvement in all those positions that municipalities are going through. There was a point about the functionality of the MPEGs. Firstly, we should indicate that across all provinces, MPEGs and municipalities are created. Because of differentiations and challenges there and there, training capacity has been built, and certainly will soon be benefit the benefits of creating those structures. So I might not necessarily say generally they are not functional. There are good stories, I'm sure, in other municipalities, particularly those big municipalities where if you talk about 10, the difficulty is to really see who's the committee there, and then I will understand the challenge of what we are referring to. In our presentation, we would have indicated that SALGA has created guidelines for mining towns on how to engage. But I must also indicate here that recently we had an opportunity to make a presentation to the cabinet Lekgotla, and the minister actually made reference to that earlier on, about how the service delivery task team attempts to respond to that challenge. And I'm sure all of us would work together to respond to distressed mining towns. And that discussion is on course. So SALGA has lifted the matter, but not only that, they also have created guidelines for municipalities to better engage. We do take note that municipalities necessarily, they have no people who are called mining experts. And that's why we thought it's important to create a space for them to properly be able to engage. There was a question about response. A part of our presentation was indicated that we have put some capacity in municipalities in relation to building, to public participation. And we have indicated there's a correlation between public participation and community protests. I think the minister earlier on made the examples of one municipality in Lesedi, and I think one in Limpopo, of how they engage communities. And the models are introduced, and those SALGAs are indicated in our presentation. In responding to Pillar 1 of public participation, we're doing some work there, that there must be a response, municipalities must be able to respond, and the capacity of councillors. And across our program, part of the thing that we do largely is to really ensure that leadership of local government has the capacity to engage, and not only engage by virtue of IDP forums only, but organically ensure that people appreciate what they do, and that we can avoid unnecessary protests. However, we also know that some protests are engineered politically. They have anything to do with service delivery, are necessarily meant to disrupt the system. And therefore, that engagement is taking place, and we develop capacity around what needs to be dealt with. Chair, as I conclude, it will be very important to indicate, and I'm sure the last presentation would also, we can draw from it, that the manner in which SALGA has engaged, even to help change the narrative, it's an important thing that we should record. Sometimes we can underplay it. That as we start, a number of bigger municipalities were in the red, and we have seen gradual improvement over the years. Because we had to ensure that we provide hands-up support. We have developed programs and interventions, some in partnership with the private sector, some with the HG itself. And that whole discussion beginning to change, people appreciate that what's happening in local government. I would have indicated that if you look at the earlier, and even prior the local government, democratic local government, access to services or municipal services was far lower than what we have today. So the story is huge. And I think we should still say to SALGA's leadership that this story will be told properly, not necessarily in graphs, but in a practical life where we bring people's experiences, that what we used to be and what are we today. If you go to Johannesburg and see people going to the buses, metro buses, the change of Soweto for what it used to be and what it is today. If you go and see that there's an extension of services, traffic lights everywhere, lights, people are being trafficked, that tells you a story that local man is very important. If you take the story of Tsenoli, you would not have heard about it before, that people could have access to Wi-Fi for free, and that generate totally new discussion, to a point that no longer becomes part of the basic services that municipalities must provide, that people must have access to Wi-Fi. And that's a huge milestone in changing the discussions at the local government level. The same if you look at the international branding. eThekwini has done so much that even in the ranking of water provision, is among the best in the world. You have the Cape Town, the highest people that visit here, and there's a role of municipalities that changes the discourse of how government should work. So, this story must still be told, not in 10 minutes or 20 minutes. We tell the story where we started and where we are and what are the issues of the future. You would have not, and I think this point was made earlier on, that historically, and in apartheid orientation, local government was meant to provide paper and you sign and so it was paper pushing. But you would know that today you create, part of your responsibility to create the economy in a space where you live, healthiness and all basic services. The Minister of Health today was addressing us on providing basic primary health care. That's also located at local government level. So Chair, these issues, I think we still have more time to explain and go to the details that how moving from so many to 800 municipalities to 200, what has been the learning throughout that process and what has been the challenges and the achievement that we've received over this period. That comparison is extremely important for us to be able to do it. But I must also ensure that going back to basics has changed even the discussion in the country. And somebody would ask, what is the role of SALGA to ensure that municipalities play to it? I would confirm that all members of SALGA have signed to it, that municipalities must all go back. So if you were to define what is a minimum requirement of a municipality, those pillars tells you what a municipality will look like, including that all positions that are critical must be filled, and the support. But we have not stopped there. I think one thing that we should mark, in the recent launching of the Center of Leadership and Governance by SALGA, precisely to ensure that learning is continuous, but knowledge is shared. And as you induct new councillors, they are beneficiary of what the story has all been. So to create a more saturated knowledge about what needs to be done moving forward is an issue that we think SALGA could pride itself with that achievement. And I'm sure, as I said, the story will be told. Thank you very much.
Councillor Moloi.
Thank you very much, Honorable Co-Chair, Flora Portman. Nikere, firstly, I don't think our Deputy Chair, Ntatenawa, is doing justice to the session by trying to cover up certain things and questions. I don't think it is good. And I will be failing in my duty for not actually dealing with that aspect of the question.
Sorry, Councillor, maybe the Honorable Nawa heard that it was the slippery of the tongue. It was not that the Honorable Member said there are no organograms. I really understand him. And also the member that raised the question, remember she's a woman. Thanks.
No problem, ma'am. I know that because it's Women's Month, we are expected to say things that, anything. But I just want to bring back, Honorable Chairs, the point our Deputy Chairperson of the NCOP. Remember earlier on when the Deputy chairperson of the NCOP was speaking about us and them. I just want us to actually remember what the deputy chairperson of the NCOP said about us and them. And it happens all the time. And it can't be left like that because we will live here with a misinformation. It cannot be right. It can't happen that at this point in time and 15 years down the line of our local government, of our democracy, that there are municipalities which exist without an organogram. It cannot happen, and it will not happen. And surely, it cannot even, the blame cannot even be apportioned to SALGA. Because yes, indeed, we have MECs of local government, we've got ministers of local government, we've got premiers. If there is a premier in any province where there are municipalities, there are no organograms, then it must start from the head. And I think we must start it from there. But nonetheless, Chair, I don't want to dwell much on
Order,
that.
Chairperson. Please, councillors.
Honorable Wana, we did not give you a chance to speak, ma'am.
Okay.
Can you please allow the Honorable Councillor to finish what she's saying? Honorable Councillor.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairs. But coming to the question again, Chair, of the how do we interpret the issues of our relationship with our mining houses in the municipalities where we come from. The fact that at this point in time the issue of how we interpret the mining social labor plans. Under normal circumstances, your mining social labor plan is supposed to be incorporated into your IDP of a municipality. And these matters are discussed because there are such forums to discuss these matters. I come from Dr. Kenneth Kaunda District Municipality. We do have such engagements with the mining houses. But I must tell you also something that you might not necessarily know, honorable chairs and honorable members, that over and above the fact that we say under normal circumstances they are supposed to be incorporated into your IDPs, some mining houses, I must say, are disingenuous because they will put these nice things to have for your municipalities and agree with you that this is what we are going to do for the municipality because they want to appear in good books of the DMR. And they end up not actually fulfilling what is written in their social labor plans. That cannot be apportioned to us as SALGA. Because of the fact that of the failure of DMR and the department itself for lack of enforcement on these mining companies, it cannot be apportioned to us. So surely, this is not a responsibility of us alone. This is a collective responsibility. If ever we are failing as local government on this matter, surely both provincial and national, you are also failing to actually exercise your oversight role. Because as you are exercising your oversight role, when you go down there, you should be able to actually engage those mining houses as part of your mandate and check as to whether what are the issues, what are the issues that are making it difficult for these mining houses to actually come to the party and implement that which actually they have agreed to put in their own social labor plans. So I'm saying, if any sphere of government is failing, it's our own collective responsibility. We are all failing. We cannot come here and apportion blame to one another. Then it actually exposes us, even our intergovernmental relations are not working well. We cannot be now here, we are us and them. It should be as a point of departure. We are supposed to be the hand, whatever we are doing that side, we must know on the other side. Therefore, it takes us back to the fact that let us go back to basics. And I can assure you the document Back to Basic is actually working. In our province, by the way, in Northwest, instead of us reporting on a monthly basis, because we report on a monthly basis to the minister, we report on a weekly basis. Every Friday, we report about the work done in that particular week, about whether we are moving forward or there is problems and what are the challenges that are there that we are faced with. And that is why the provincial government is playing its oversight role, and they will be able to then see in the process or there are challenges here in this municipality. Either the problem is the capacity of the municipality itself to implement certain decisions or something like that. And I'm sure even National Treasury has come up with ways and means. That is why now We can't be talking about lack of capacity even from municipalities, because there are competency requirements for you as a municipality to appoint certain officials. You can't appoint a CFO, for instance, who does not have CPMD. And that is why all municipalities currently, almost everybody, actually, there is a deadline even to that effect. Gore, by this period, any new employee or a senior manager, either be it section 57, 56, should have acquired a certain level of competencies, are regulated. This is regulated. And even now, that is why all of us, we are actually attending courses and to capacitate ourselves further. So gone are those days that today we can say there are those who are incapacitated, even councillors. Gone are those days. So Nekere, when we deal with this thing moving forward, let us check what, because we said, let us focus on the achievements of the past 15 years, rather than dwell much on the failures. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Magabe.
Well, thanks very much, Chairperson. Both the Deputy Chairperson of SALGA, Councillor Nawa, and the Honorable Moloi have covered part of what I wanted to raise. It was precisely on query management, municipalities taking long to respond on queries. The point I wanted to raise was that many a time when you see community protests marching to municipal offices, many of the issues that get raised there, you may find that they are not all of them related to powers and functions that are assigned on municipalities. And therefore, critical point is around strengthening the cooperative governance around the three spheres, because if they have raised an issue that is related to another state department, and that department taking time to respond, therefore it disables municipalities in terms of time response on such particular issues. I'm sure that's the first point that I wanted to raise. The second point that I wanted to touch on, Chair, is the issue that was raised by Hoshima Wani in the morning, I'm sure, which is related to us strengthening our relationship with traditional leaders. The point that has been emphasized, it is around the Structures Act, Section 81 in particular, because it need to be unpacked for them to really play a meaningful role and contribute in the life of our municipalities and our communities. It is upon individual municipalities in terms of how do you want to utilize them. Others will serve in the portfolio committees, and when you go to another municipality, they are not assigned in the portfolio committees. That will also relate to their tools of trade. Others will get cell phones in some municipalities, others will not get cell phones. That will also relate to their travel allowances as they per sitting of those particular municipalities. All these issues need to, in terms of harnessing this working relationship amongst ourselves traditionally, they need to be worked up. I'm sure I concur with what they've suggested on amending that section, so that section is able to articulate things that we want to see happening in the local municipalities. The other point that I wanted to raise, Chair, is related to what the executive mayor of the city of Tshwane has raised around the influx into the cities or in the urban centers. I know I come from the district in Sekhukhune, where the overall population growth per annum is 1%. But when you go to some municipalities where there is economic potential or economic life, just say in Beggarsford, the population growth per annum there is almost 3%. It says as you plan, you also have to consider all those particular areas, because in the long run, they also catch up with our own infrastructure that we develop in our municipalities. So those are points that I wanted to comment on. Thanks.
Thank you very much, members who came in. There is one issue of grading that honorable member there indicated in terms of grading of municipalities. I didn't hear anybody touching on that. Before I allow Councillor Ramokgopa to come in terms of, oh, he's fine. Councillor Mloyi, MEC here, you'll
Surely we're
follow
supposed to
Councillor
deal with
Mloyi.
it. No, I was gonna say, Honorable Chairs, this is not our competency for that matter. We don't determine the grading for municipalities. It is determined by the minister, and it is determined by those things that are there in legislation, your income, your population, and other matters. And I'm sure Councillor Shubesh will add more in terms of what are the features of which makes up the grading of a municipality.
Thanks, Honorable Chair. I just want to confirm as a fact for the record that we don't have a municipality without an organogram. Just as a fact, so that the matter is laid to rest. Because we might leave here doubting. And I think the comrades here can just also confirm the fact only.
So, sorry, Honorable MEC, I am tempted to allow the Honorable Wana to rectify what he raised earlier on.
Thank you. I'm sure they didn't understand the explanation. I was not saying, for instance, Mr. Nawa or Councillor understand what I was saying. He understand very well what I was saying. Secondly, we were in Northwest, Honorable Nawa. In Northwest, all the municipalities that were there as members, there were 2 municipality manager in each local municipality, 2 MMs. As a result, other one was assumed as an administrator, other one is a municipality, is an MM. That chairperson of that local government can bear that to me. That's why I was saying, no. Northwest, chairperson Northwest. Chairperson Northwest, in some of the municipalities.
Oh, okay, Honorable Wana, I think you
So-
did, okay, ma'am.
Let
Thank you
me
very much.
finish.
Honorable
Let me
Nawa,
finish.
you clarified what we wanted you to clarify. Because when you were raising your question, and it was on record, Mama. Honorable Wana, can you listen to me? It was on record. You said there are no organograms in the municipalities. But I am happy that the Honorable Councillor did understand what you wanted to say. And I think the Honorable Nawa deserves a very big round of applause from you, Honorable Member. Continue, MEC.
Okay, thank you very much, members. We need that. We must laugh. We can't go to recordings. It's healthy to laugh. Deputy Chairperson, I will get back to you. Deputy Chairperson Tate, Honorable Tau, we're still learning. Retseba councillors.
Okay. No, thank you very much, Chair. Yeah. Maybe because I've got only 2 questions. There are only 2 questions that I need to respond to. But let me start with the last comment that Honorable Nawa made around the question of the narrative and how do we sell it out there. And I would start by saying, Honorable Nawa, councillors and comrades, during the apartheid days, at some point it was so difficult at home that one had to run away from home. And I sought hiding in Soweto at that time. A short story of it, I was mugged twice while staying in Soweto. One at Togoza Park and once at Elka Park. just to amplify what you were talking about, today if you go to Togoza Park, you think that you're somewhere else. Ever since I was marked, I dare not even think of passing Togoza Park, including Elka. Should I pass there, I will make it a point that it's before 7 in order to be home. But today, the last time I visited my relatives, we had a very good time until 10 o'clock in the evening, and we were never passed by anybody. And what a beautiful thing to talk about insofar as the transformation and building of new cities. So probably these are the kind of stories that we need to talk about, how local government has evolved and the extent to which it has played a role in building new cities, and especially our local economies and so forth. The question around the issue of legislation, I don't think we need to really limit it to time frame. When the matter was brought to the attention of the NCOP, I think it was in 2013 when it was brought up. There was a long debate around the over-regulation and the kind of legislation that we have passed. And the councillor is correct, because if the National Assembly has passed a bill, it is sent to the National Council of Provinces for concurrence. And if we pass it and still say we are the champion, we are this strategic house that represents the interests of provinces and the local sphere, and the very same legislation goes down and strangles the local sphere of government, did we play our role as the NCOP? And I think that is the key question that we're beginning now to grapple with as we evolve insofar as the local government week is concerned. Hence, in my input, I made the point that we are at a stage now where in which, together with SALGA, not shall we be sitting with a list of pieces of legislation, but now we'll be looking at the entire package. Where there is a need for amendments or whatsoever, nothing stops us from proposing those amendments with the ministers. At the same time, there is a space that is created also for SALGA to engage with the executive at a cabinet level, whether it be Lekgotla, whether it be any other forum that has been created for SALGA then to begin to engage with the executive. There's nothing that would stop SALGA from raising those issues. Hence, I even went on further to say, I don't know if it was an overemphasis or a re-emphasis of a point that was raised earlier during the first session around questions, around statements. Right now, the beauty of how the institution has evolved, you would remember that before, even the president did not address or take questions in the National Council of Provinces. He just did or presented an annual address at the end of the year. Now the president is taking questions in the National Council of Provinces. What then stops us as the National Council of Provinces to then begin to raise those broad strategic policy questions that has got to do with the capacity and strengthening the role that the local sphere has to play. And I think these are the spaces that we need to begin to look at collectively on how then do we deepen or take advantage of and ensure that we help one another, we work together. I spoke at length about, I might have cut some other things, but if one had to go word by word in what we had prepared for the workshop, there's a greater detail
intergovernmental relations. The role that I spoke about, the introduction of an IGR unit ever since the amendment of our rule, because then, before 2010, it was just about the NCOP representing interests of provinces and the local sphere. We had then to unpack that, to say, but if then this is this constitutional mandate, how then do we practicalize this? How do we give effect to this constitutional responsibility or obligation? It is for that reason that Section 14B(1) of the rules of the NCOP were then amended to then say, this is one thing that we need to do to have something that we call Provincial Week. Provincial Week was never there in the rules of the National Council of Provinces. It was never a flagship program. So by amending the rule, then created this space where we then better engage, and as a result, some of these matters have been brought to the attention of the NCOP. So what we need to do moving forward is more about how do we then practicalize this. I'm just afraid that, let me not even get there. Let me not get there. The issue that has been raised around the interventions. As the NCOP, we had in our programming committee meeting, we had a debate already. There is a debate that has started to say, but are we really playing the role that we're supposed to play as the NCOP, insofar as the interventions are concerned? There's one particular province, I won't mention the name because we might degenerate. There's a province that would send a letter, intervention. Whilst we are busy trying to make sense of this intervention, then there's an amendment following of the very same intervention. And then that intervention will then be endorsed by the House. After a week, there's another intervention that comes through to the National Council. Whilst we're trying to make sense, there's an amendment again, but what is happening? Do we know exactly why maybe there were these sections for intervention and so forth? So we are at that stage now, even as the National Council. Yes, I take the suggestion that has been put. I don't know, I can't remember who made that comment to say we need to strengthen that capacity of working together with SALGA insofar as interventions are concerned. Comrades, do you know about this? What is your view around this? Let us sit together. Is there a need really for this? Let us look at the administrative problems that are being raised or the political issues that have been raised and so forth. And therefore, on the basis of that, we will then be able to pass. Because, you know, what is interesting at times, there's a greater temptation to raise other things, but I don't want to do that. So, now I thought, yeah, these were the key issues. On the mining social plans, or getting mining, whatever. Yeah. Now I was happy. I mean, Khosi made it very clear. There's a direct suggestion that Khosi was putting to us. Isn't it time now that we pause and reflect on this? Isn't it time that we pause and look at as to whether our municipalities working with our traditional leadership have done the right things? And if we find something wrong, isn't it time for us to propose changes? I think that's what Khosi was saying. And I think now listening to Khosi, I said to myself, yeah, Khosi or Namolao, please move in this direction. and come back to us and report on how far you had made progress insofar as the social labor plans are concerned. On the municipalities that should have made presentations, I fully agree. I fully agree. It's just that the report would not need this kind of a session because not everything will be agreed to and concluded in this forum or at this level. Yes, you are throwing everything in the pot, and it is our responsibility to then better improve even our engagement with SALGA. Whether if maybe we come out of this engagement with a structure that we would say should meet at least quarterly, or monthly, or weekly, whatever it is possible. So those are some of the practical things that we can look at, because the only time now we establish a structure that work together is when we plan for the local government week. But beyond that, there's no structure that then says, let's follow through our decisions. Let's see whether if we're making progress and so forth. So these are some of the things that we could possibly be looking at, and possibly it will cover some other things. The deputy chair raised an issue with me to say, but where does this thing of we and them, or them and us, come from? It was a humorous thing, comrades. It was a humorous comment to say that, yes, when we come here, let the sitting arrangement not reflect SALGA there, members of parliament that side, and then we talk as if we are pointing fingers at each other and so forth. SALGA must do this. Why are you not doing that? It cannot be like that. And I just want to caution ourselves that we don't fall into that trap of creating that space or playing into that space in a negative way. It was more of a positive, humorous comment. That's why we laughed about it when the comment was made. We didn't see anything serious about it. So, kitla kopa gore maybe re tswela ka re ding re tlogele bangwe ba yone, and then we'll deal with the others. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Deputy Chairperson. I've seen the hand of Councillor Pillay. I don't know whether it's for question or for respond. And I saw other two hands at the back, the Honorable Mohai and Mohapi and other Honorable Councillor this side. Maybe after the Councillor Pillay, then do you also want to say something? Okay. We will have the Honorable Councillor Pillay, Honorable Mohapi. I don't know whether the member there is still ready to ask question. Councillor, I saw your hand. You're fine, thank you very much. And then we'll have the Honorable Member Makua, then will be the last one, Councillor. Thank you very much. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Two areas I want to deal with. The one is on the issue of grading. I think Councillor Mulo is correct to say that. Yes.
Can you speak to the mic, Honorable Councillor?
Apologies. Just on the issues of grading, I think so Councillor Mulo is correct that it's a determination made by the national minister. But I think there's a bigger issue there, because the grading has an impact on how the division of revenue is calculated, because the basis of that is the population. And the issue that SALGA had been raising there consistently is the frequency of your census figure leaves a gap. So our last census was in 2011. It made a determination about what the population is per municipality. But for the next period, up to the next census, we don't have an accurate determination of what those figures are. And there's been a debate about what if you like, the intermediate arrangement is to ensure that in between the two census, which is the authoritative figures of population figures, that there's an effort to ensure that the population is updated so that they in fact reflect realistically on what the actual population situation is. There's a flip side and there's a downside to it, because it's receiving municipalities whose population increases and therefore the share of the equitable, the share of the local government equitable share increases. And for municipalities which, if you like, the sponsoring municipalities, obviously decreases. But there's a mechanism built into the formula that attempts to offset that. So that's the one issue I wanted to deal with. The second issue is, I think there was a question that had to do with the sustainability of the interventions that have been put in place. And I, at the risk of going into, or not undermining, because that's not the attempt, Deputy Chair of the NCOP, but I think we have indeed been making this reflection about them and us on a lighter note. But I think the reality is that it does manifest itself in a serious manner, often when SALGA presents in committees of Parliament and the NCOP. I think for me, the principle that we must live here with is that the problems of local government is a problem of the collective of our system of governance. So it's not a SALGA problem, it's not a problem of the local sphere, it's a problem of the completeness of our system of government. So that's the first principle. And how it manifests itself in different forms. So in one regard, and it's something that at least at the level of the Appropriations Committee, the Select Committee on Finance, there is a increased pattern of direct grants, so grants going to a municipality being replaced by indirect grants, so grants that are administered by a national department or a province in a municipality. And the implication there is that when you administer an indirect grant, you're actually undermining the local capacity to execute. So if the problem is we're putting money directly into a local municipality and they're not spending the money, we're not dealing with the problem by taking the money and bringing the big brother to come and spend the money. And the point we make is that we have consciously said we have adopted a developmental system of local government, in fact, a developmental state, which means that where there's incapacity at a local level, the responsibility is twofold. One is to find mechanisms of spending the money, but importantly is to leave a capacity there or develop capacity in a local municipality to ensure that there's sustainability in our interventions. So you don't want to bring the national department, come, spend the money, but 12 months later, they pull out, the municipality still sits with the problem that was there before in national intervention. And then the second element of that manifestation is the proliferation of powers and functions that are constitutionally assigned to municipalities being usurped by national and provincial spheres. Now, there are two examples here. The one is the issues around the accreditation, the level 3 accreditation, and particularly with regard to the metros. There's been a big debate. In fact, on the flight here this morning, I was reading something in the Business Day about a statement issued by SALGA. I'm not sure where that statement comes from, but I think the principle that it's raising is that the issue of level 3 accreditation is fundamental to the constitutional role that is envisaged for local government. And it can't be that our insistence of it holding has got to do with the incapacity of the local sphere. Because the responsibility we carry as government is to capacitate so that you are creating a state that's able to discharge its responsibility. The second one linked there is the issues around water and sanitation. And we've seen recent pronouncements by the department there around functions being, or a discussion at least at this point, of functions being taken out and being executed by a national department. And again, the point is, let's create a developmental state. Let's create capacity within the state at all spheres so that each one is able to discharge their constitutional mandate in the context of our system of intergovernmental relationships. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. Chairperson, can I make a comment specifically on the issue of interventions? I have a pecuniary interest on that particular matter. For the simple reason, Councillor Tau or Honorable Tau, that interventions, to me, I don't see anything wrong with interventions. We have seen in many municipalities that were collapsing, where interventions has yielded results. It cannot be correct for us to make a blanket approach, specifically on the outcome of interventions. Two, on the issue of relations between SALGA and the provincial executive councils. Again, I think the earlier person who made a comment is the chairperson of a particular portfolio committee in a particular province. We have moved to various provinces. And again, it cannot be correct for us to sit here and give a picture as if SALGA is not cooperating or there's no cooperation between SALGA and the particular provincial executive council. We have seen, outside an example, cooperation between SALGA and the provincial executive council in KZN. We have seen it in Eastern Cape. It's only in one, if not mistaken, province where there are dynamics that needs to be attended to. And I'm saying this is not the right platform for us to address that particular matter. And again, Honorable Tau, I think the mistake that we must not do is to forget one important thing, that implementation of interventions would always find it hard for as long as Section 139, subsection 8 of the Constitution is not taken into consideration, especially where it requires that the national legislation must put regulations to implement interventions. In the absence of regulations, we'll always find different interpretations, and different interpretations should not be put into a context of saying that intervention is a failure. I'm saying the sooner we expedite processes of ensuring that there are regulations, that would ensure that we have a uniform approach in terms of interventions. There's no harm if you see intervention taking place in a particular area in terms of Section 139, subsection 1B, then immediately thereafter, as and when you assess, you realize that there's been a serious mistake that you have committed, therefore you opt for Section 139, subsection 1C. I don't see any harm, but I'm saying in the absence of regulations, there will always be situations where you interpret things differently from one area to the other. But Chairperson, again, it doesn't start at interventions. There are clear pieces of legislations in terms of what is expected of us. Outside a practical example, Section 47 of the Municipal Systems Act is very clear. It requires that the MECs must present to the provincial legislature and the minister a consolidated report on the state of performance of municipalities. Is it happening? I doubt. It goes further to Section 47, subsection 3 to say a copy will only be sent to National Council of Provinces. I'm saying if the provincial legislature is not taking its full responsibility, we cannot come and sit here and say it has been a failure. Chairperson, Section 154, subsection 1 of the Constitution, it's an ongoing exercise. If it is not executed, when you see intervention taking place, it is coming as the last resort because all other avenues were not explored. So we cannot sit here and say intervention is a failure for the simple reason that we failed from our side to ensure that provisions that are clearly stipulated in terms of the acts and pieces of legislations are not adhered to. Chairperson, outside an example, when you assess the impact of intervention in NCOP, Honorable Tau in particular, when an intervention takes place, we present a report. During the exit, we present a termination report. The termination report assists us to assess the impact of the intervention. In the absence of that particular exercise at the provincial legislature, we cannot come here and conclude that there's no assessment in terms of the impact of the intervention. And I want to place it on record on all interventions that took place in South Africa since this 5th parliament. It has been unanimously adopted by NCOP, 9 provinces. I don't recall any intervention that took place where there was a, let me put it caso liciteo from a particular province in terms of saying they support or they don't support. Chairperson, like I've indicated, issue of regulations is one of the most important things that this House must pronounce in terms of saying the cabinet minister responsible try and expedite the processes of ensuring that regulations are put in place. I would cite a practical example. If you check section 139 subsection 2B, Roman alphabet I, 1 and 2, it is saying during the processes of disapproval, Roman alphabet 1 would always say within 28 days, the cabinet member responsible disapproves. It goes further to say using the conjunction or the NCOP within 180 days. I'm saying in the absence of regulations, that is where you'd find NCOP acting in the absence of an action from the side of the minister. Other people would go out and say it's a rubber stamp. It is not a rubber stamp. I think it is a challenge in terms of regulations that are not applicable, and I'm saying it. And I'm saying it once again, Chairperson, to place it on record. We have seen result yielded as a result of interventions. Section 163, subsection 1B, Roman alphabet 2, is very clear of the Constitution. SALGA, as an organized local government, must designate people to participate in the NCOP. In committees of NCOP, particularly a select committee of Cllr, you have a rep of SALGA. And in the select committee, that is where decisions in terms of determination of whether you intervene or you don't intervene are taking place. So SALGA must equally participate at that particular level. And in that case, would not come here and say intervention is not having any meaningful impact or not, because we would be executing what the laws require us to do. And I'm saying it. We have seen result in other areas where intervention took place. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Mohapi. That
Chair,
was loud
Chair,
and
before we
clear.
make a mistake, before we run into making a serious mistake, you see, you shouldn't have allowed, or you should have informed us. Now I open for debate. Because you see, sometimes subjective issues presented as objective issues may not necessarily be a reflection of the truth. I would not engage with some of the issues that have been raised. Hence, the issue that I emphasized was to say, as the NCOP, we had resolved to start a process of reflecting as to whether, if we have been effective enough in processing. That is what I said. Not that interventions have not been effective or they are not effective or what. So we shouldn't leave here with the wrong impression that I had said we are challenging whether if the interventions have been effective or not. So I would rather put the point that there is a need for us to reflect on that as to whether if it is happening or not.
Yeah, Honorable Deputy Chairperson, maybe you arrived late, but there was a lady at the back who did mention the issue of intervention. And I think the Honorable Mohapi was trying to respond to that, because all the responses that came did not touch on the issue that the lady raised. And now, honorable members, allow me not to allow you to debate on these issues, because now I can see the Honorable Mohapi want to come back and the lady there want to come back, and I'm not going to allow that. This is the time for the Honorable Member Makua to continue with, I don't know whether it's respond or question or recommendation, but I did see your hand. Honorable members, please, please, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Mine would be more in the form of a comment. Firstly, to say that the theme that we have for this workshop, particularly the B part thereof, talks about entrenching cooperative government for people-centered development. I think that it would help us all if we are very frank and honest in terms of how we do the introspection. That has been raised by Honorable Tao earlier. Chair, but then Councillor Nawa raised two important points for me. The one is where he makes reference to the Pillar 1, where he talks about putting people first. Now, in terms of putting people first, there is a policy of this government where we're talking about dealing with the triple challenges of poverty, unemployment, and inequality. Now, I think that we are not doing enough in the discourse here in terms of how do we deal with the challenge of unemployment. Councillor Nawa then also refers to the economic infrastructure. Now, I'm going to contradict a comment that I made earlier on about the shopping malls. Because what we would need to do as a government, as is all three spheres of government, is to look at how do we deal with small business development. If we are not able to deal with that, we can have clean audits and everything else, we will still have people protesting. Because the inequality in which we're living is that poor people see development happening and they don't benefit from it. And that not only makes them disappointed, but also the point that has been raised by Anusha from civil society is that it makes them disaffected. Because people are saying that government doesn't make a difference for us as a community. I'm trying not to make it for an individual. Chair, my final point would then be to say that if we look at the civil society environment at the moment, civil society, although you may have mentioned, Mrs. Williams, a whole range of civil society organizations that you're working with, it has been substantially weakened. And we need to ask ourselves that within our select committees here, within Parliament, we're saying that we want to have a people's parliament, it must be accessible to people. How do we do that as well within the sphere of local government so that people do begin to understand the issues and the shortcomings and the priorities that local government is also struggling with? But with that, Chair, I think that we in the NCOP has got to do some serious introspection as well as to how do we perform our role as that link between local government and the national legislature. I think there is a lot of room for improvement on that. We do know that we allow members of SALGA to participate in NCOP sessions, but it is clearly not at the level where it should be. Some of us in the select committees are also saying it would have helped so much if we could have local governments participating in the debate and engaging with departments of government in our select committees. We are not doing it. And therefore, I think that if we are not giving attention to that today, Chairperson, it might be necessary that we then look at how exactly we will address it as a commitment, Honorable Nawa, to this 15-year celebration, where we would say that these are the great achievements that we have made, but these are the targets we're setting for ourselves, and maybe give some clear time frames. It may be something that SALGA needs to do, it may be something that we have to do in the NCOP. I don't know who will take on that challenge, Chair. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Honorable Makua. Before I allow you, Honorable Councillor, I want to make this announcement, Honorable members. We were supposed to have the item that was supposed to start at 4 o'clock, which was the wellness awareness about the deputy, by the Deputy Speaker, Honorable LG. So he is not here. This item falls off. So what is going to happen now, after you, Councillor, we'll allow the Honorable De Beer, and lastly, it will be our Honorable Dlamini here, whereby she said she wants to also give her inputs. And as you were giving your inputs, Mama, are you listening to me, Honorable Dlamini? Okay. I want you to also maybe help us with this item of vote of thanks, so that after you, then we adjourn the meeting and then we go and rest for tomorrow. Thank you very much. I think it's clear. It's you, the Honorable De Beer, and then she will give a vote of thanks, and then we close. I don't know whether we do have an announcement. If there is an announcement, then it can be forwarded to us before the Honorable Member Dlamini give a vote of thanks. Thanks.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, I think there should be a debate at some stage in terms of interventions that are required. My debate on interventions comes in a very simple way, where you could find a province or national, go to local government, and promise whatever they are promising, and run away. And now the councillors are left alone on the ground while national is not coming. It should also be a responsibility or powers of the councillors at whatever level they are, a locality they are, to request a particular minister or MEC to come and account. Secondly, Chair, I just wanted to assist you, Chairperson, on the names, Chair. There's an invasion, Chair. Aye.
Order, honorable members. Order, honorable members. There's no change in what I said. The only change that we have in now is that the Honorable Deputy Speaker has arrived, and I'm going to request him to come and join us here, so that this misunderstanding has been cleared. There's no presentation, honorable members. The wellness awareness, we have heard that it falls off. But there's no problem. We welcome our Deputy Speaker. He is here. He is with us. Maybe he also want a round of applause that he did show up. Because if he did not come, then next time we were not going to invite him. And I believe when he's going to speak, he'll start by thanking me because you were already out. But I'm saying, come in, even if the doors are closed. Before the Honorable Councillor?
Yeah, thank you, Chair.
And then
I just wanted to end by saying, I also wanted to assist, Chair, on the names. I could hear you interchangeably saying Nawa, Wana, and when you read both names, you read the other one from this side. They are actually one name, and that's why they were understanding each other like this, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Maybe it's because the other one is in Sepedi and the other one is in Xhosa, you see. That is why the change of letters. But then what I wanted to say is to say, the Honorable De Beer, you come in. Honorable Dlamini, you will wait and then come in after the Honorable Deputy Speaker. Thank you. Over to you, Honorable De Beer.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. We're excited that the Deputy Speaker is here waiting for his presentation on wellness. Chairperson, in terms of intergovernmental relations, the Select Committee for Finance and the Select Committee for Appropriations invite SALGA, and there's our Honorable Councillor sitting with, looking at me. He's part and parcel of that committee's programs dealing with the national budget, dealing with the division of revenue, as phase 1 in the beginning of the year, and later on going through the rest of the program next Tuesday. We will be calling National Treasury on the withholding of funding and funds from municipalities as a follow-up on the previous meeting, and this will take place on a quarterly basis. So in terms of our strategic plan of finance and appropriations, we incorporated SALGA as part and parcel of the total program. And that's the way I think we have to conduct our work, not only here within Parliament, but even when we do our oversight in provinces, in our constituencies, etc., to tie that relationship closer. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable De Beer. The Honorable Councillor, Deputy Chairperson, Councillor Nawa, wants to welcome the Speaker. Over to you, Honorable Nawa.
No, Deputy Speaker, I thought we have postponed that, well, but we'll continue. The Deputy Speaker is here. Deputy Speaker, I thought it's important to indicate that when we discuss B2B, normally it assumes to be an intervention for local government. I think that's a problem. It must be seen as a government, the totality of government program, so that you don't reduce it to local. And that is important for all branches of government to play a role in ensuring that the municipalities are functional. And so departments must come on board. The issue that the human settlement might want to take away some of the responsibilities of local government on the basis that they are intervening, they are helping, sometimes it's not helpful actually. So there's a need for us to be able to be aligned and appreciate that this intervention is not necessarily a national government problem resolved, but it's a totality for all of us. The point that has made rounds about interventions in municipalities, it will be important that it's not only, literally there should be a discussion with SALGA. We are not necessarily consulted in many cases, and sometimes it happens, we are consulted after it has happened. And that also creates problems. So we would wish that as we discuss, we create a platform of consultations prior the intervention itself. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Deputy Chair. Those are words of welcome, Honorable Deputy Speaker, to you from the Councillor. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Let me obey your instruction and thank you, as you requested me to do, for giving me this short opportunity to explain a confusion that should not have arisen. But I also feel very awkward, Deputy Chair of the NCOP, that I can't address, I can't rather speak on a matter that is close to my heart. I'm very tempted for what I've been hearing, being discussed here. But I will not go into that area. But it's relevant. I spoke to the chair of SALGA and about the nature of challenges that we face, broadly speaking in government, and that one of those challenges in the public service, for example, that was recorded was the levels of stress in the government, which affect the performance of employees. If employees are stressed, it is more so with public representatives. And I do not know of a systematic program that is driven throughout the system to deal with that problem specifically. Those that are there, without going into details about them, are often not implemented effectively, or their impact often takes long and a lengthy period of time. So I suggested to him that there's a modality that we would like to introduce to the NEC of SALGA. Because I had spoken to a group of members of the EXCO of SALGA at an NEC Lokgotla, where I was invited and broached the subject to them to be able to do it. But the condition was that this thing would happen preferably in the evening after the programs that have been done, in a place where we would be barefoot, in easy pants, listen to the explanation of what this thing is all about and how it operates, and then do it practically. And the intention was so that inside each of our councils, the councillors themselves, the staff, senior managers included, the levels of stress are unbelievably high without any mechanism to cope with that. And so what we sought to do is to demonstrate a very easy program to do, but the unfortunate thing was that it ended up on the formal program of the local government week in the manner in which it did when it was targeted. I decided that I should come and explain it because otherwise indirect explanation may not have done what I'm doing now. To say that we will provide this information once more to all members, and we are hoping that we can still have a session, if not all NEC members, some of the NEC members. And the proposal that is floating around is that let's do it on Thursday morning when there is a possibility, because there's an open session. It is better often to do it in the evening, but we don't want to interfere with your evenings, honorable members, because we've got major important matters of national importance to address. So we would locate it in the morning. It will take 2.5 hours. This process is a lifesaver. It has immediate effect, provided you will follow it up as well and so on. And we thought we would demonstrate it, and we would also give you contacts and links that you can follow up back in the provinces. There are some provinces where there's a plethora of people like me who are trained to do it. But the key thing about it is the impact on organizational performance, especially because our structures are conflict-ridden, and one of the immediate outcomes when it is done inside an area is to bring down and to calm down the atmosphere for better performance and management of the problems that we handle. It's very political in that if we do it and do it properly, the outcomes are very positive, both for individuals, but for the entire organization, both public representatives and officials as well. That was the reasoning behind our request towards SALGA and so on. So it ended up on this program. We hope that we can communicate and give this information at a later stage in different forms and so on. So if members agree, we are available, and we'll be able to do that whenever we are requested to do so. But we're proposing that those who can come, please confirm. We would like to really demonstrate something that you won't stop speaking about it for the whole year, once you do it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. The Honorable Member, Damini? Yes, SALGA is also invited. I think so.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair, for the opportunity. When I raised my hand is when I was realizing that we are getting out of order, but I'm glad that Honorable Tau tried to represent me in what I wanted to say. Chairperson, I will then now go direct to what you said I must do. I want to start off by appreciating the good work that has been done by councillors for the past 15 years, especially given the history of this country, whereby in other areas there were no municipalities at all. We started afresh. But if you go to those areas, you will see that South Africa has changed. It's not the South Africa that we know. With no experience in government for that matter, as you know that we're not part of government, but we have tried our best to ensure that lives of our people has changed for better. For the fact that we have a stable country today, it reflects to the work that is being done by councillors at local level. As you will remember, Honorable Chairs, that all what we are doing, whether it's at provincial or national level, it goes down to local government. Local government is different, totally different. We can stay with a bill trying to approve it for the whole year. You will not find people toying for that. But with local government, just one day when you have no water or electricity, people are on streets. That now we have a number of days without protest and we have a stable country. It means that to me, even though not providing services 100%, but we are providing minimal services to the people in such a way that they are comfortable, not happy with what they have, and we have a stable country. We want to thank local government very much for that. I will also want to thank all presenters today, honorable chairs who contributed to this workshop to ensure that local government works for our people. We really appreciate that. It's not just any workshop for me. It's a workshop that is going to empower all of us, not only councillors, ourselves who are doing oversight. I want to get into this thorny issue. Out of that question that was asked, a chairperson, which almost turned into a joke, which I did not see. There was a matter of, in some municipalities, is it possible that you can have a municipal manager and an administrator? It's a fair question, and people were laughing. I did not know why they were laughing. If you have not been into local government, you won't know those things. For me, it was very simple to say, yes, it's possible. When the local municipality is put under administration, section 139B, you will have both the municipal manager and the administrator. Simple as that, instead of making it a chaos. So we must understand each other that we've not been all lucky to be in all these spheres of government. Some of us has been, so you have that information. It is possible to have that. And the honorable chairs, the manner in which, in that issue, we behaved ourselves, it may affect the participation. For example, some people will be afraid to raise issues because they don't know whether people will laugh at them or they will howl them. Let's try to behave maturely. We are leaders, given responsibilities at different levels. We are doing oversight. There are those that who are implementing. So when we raise issues, let's raise those issues in such a way that we are raising them to build each other at different levels. So with those chairperson, I would like also to thank all presiding officers for the good work that they've done since the beginning of this workshop to ensure that we have this sober workshop up to so far. And finally, thanking all the participants from Parliament as well as from municipalities for being part of this important workshop. It is important. We can all succeed at national level and provincial level, but if we fail at local government, we all fail. With those, I want to thank everyone who participated, and thank you very much, Honorable Chair.
A round of applause for the Honorable Member Dlamini. Thank you very much. I want us to go in peace when we go out of this meeting, not in pieces. Maybe the Honorable Member Dlamini was supposed to advise us that sometimes we need to scribble down our questions before we ask. so that we avoid us laughing at other members. I did not see any chaos in our meeting. I saw that everything was in order. So what I want to say now is that we live in peace when we go to our various hotels and parks, but bearing in mind that we received the SMSs, honorable members. That is inviting. Can we have order, honorable members? We received the SMSs that are inviting us to go and attend Morning Live tomorrow. I want the honorable members to go through their messages if ever they did not see that. And SALGA is also taken care of. They will be in the venue in the morning. And the other thing, the honorable member did not thank the traditional leaders. Yes, I've noticed that you did slip from your mind, Ma. You did not forget. You cannot forget the traditional leader, no ways. Baba Maobane, re a leboga. Re lebogile kudu-kudu le gore le tlhomphe taletšo ye. And gape re leboga kudu-kudu gore go na le di-province tše e le goreng di bereka botse le di-chairperson tša lena mola di-provinceng. Limpopo province ke ya mathomo, MEC wa rena o gona mo, councillor wa rena mo, chairperson wa SALGA o gona, Papa Magabe. I know other people don't want me to call other people Papa, but I cannot do away with that one. If people are doing the Papa thing, they deserve to be called Papa. So they are really taking care of traditional leaders. And even Free State, I have heard that their PEC, SALGA PEC is not complete without the representation of House of Traditional Leaders. Maybe, Honorable Magabe, you need to educate other chairpersons from other provinces. Thank you very much. And I think if they can, yeah, okay, if they can really learn from your leadership in the province, these issues of initiation schools won't be any problem. You're doing very well when it comes to this because you're working hand in hand with the traditional leaders. There is another announcement that SALGA members should remain behind. Honorable members, thank you very, very, very much. A big round of applause to yourselves. You were very good. Thanks.